So hi everyone, welcome to Project DFEND. Today's topic is about hydration, and we have a guest speaker, Dr. Brendon McDermott from Exercise Science in the Health, Human Performance and Recreation Department at the U of A campus. And Dr. McDermott always gives lively talks about hydration, so hopefully you'll have a lot of questions when he's finished. And Brendon, I'll just let you share your screen and I'll mute myself.
All right, I appreciate this opportunity. I'm gonna, I don't know, the promise of being lively and virtual is not necessarily the best type of, I guess, combination these days, but I guess we're gonna have to get used to this. So I'm always excited to talk about this topic. I am pretty passionate about this. And, you know, there are definitely some other things you can do in your life, but hydration is one of the things that's pretty easy for us to do that can have a profound effect on our health. So I appreciate this opportunity from the Center for Human Nutrition and the DFEND program. I think it's pretty awesome what's happening, and I'm happy to be a part. So just as an outline for the next 30 minutes, just to keep myself on task, because I kind of get off task from time to time. Angela is supposed to stop me and get me back on task if I need it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about chronic disease and hydration and how that's related. And then hopefully cover some nuggets that y'all can take away from today as well. So in terms of how much you should drink on a daily basis, how do you know if you're drinking enough? And these things are individualized, and they have to be individualized to a certain extent. We have blanket recommendations that we can make to the public, but they don't always work for everybody. And then I'll talk a little bit about hydration and physical activity. And I'm sure that you've heard by now that exercise is medicine. So we should be combining both of these things, actually all three of these things, hydration, diet, and exercise all together. So we developed a survey a couple years ago, and then our results after administering the survey to a group in population is that hydration is pretty much like smoking and or diet in the United States. And what I mean by that is people have the knowledge. So if I polled everybody on this Zoom right now, your knowledge is pretty good about hydration. The lay person knows that hydration is important, that most of our body is composed of water, that when we get little symptoms like maybe a headache or a little bit of fatigue, that we might be dehydrated or that might be related to hydration. We know that we probably should drink more, that most people are a little dehydrated throughout their day. But then we also know, even in self-report, that the habits that people exhibit and the behaviors that people do don't necessarily match the knowledge that they have. So we have knowledge about it, and we know it's not necessarily advantageous to be dehydrated or low on our body water stores. But in the end, we don't necessarily exhibit better behaviors based on our knowledge, which is interesting, even self-reported data. So just to cover a couple things hydration related, normally 60 to 70% of our body is composed of water. So that's more than half of our body is composed of water. And then in order to maintain homeostasis, and homeostasis basically means, to me anyways, as a physiology person, is that every part of our body is working ideally or is surrounded in its ideal environment for function. So if we have the right nutrients, then our cells in our body can function normally because they have the right fuel. If we have the right amount of water, our muscle function, cognitive function, neural function, and gastrointestinal function, all the way down to the cell level, if our water level is normal or ideal, then this would affect the functioning or maximize the function of all of our systems in our body. Likewise, if our body water stores are low, it will affect all of these systems. So when we don't have enough water, the main signal in our body that we realize is that we're thirsty. I was just talking with Dr. Baum about this, that we all on this meeting might be thirsty, right? Especially when we start talking about hydration and that people are normally a little dehydrated. When we start talking about it and think about it and ask yourself, are you thirsty right now? If I asked you that if you were thirsty, typically people on the call, and I can't see everybody's video right now, but a lot of times people in my classes start to take a drink. Like, are you thirsty? Really think about that for a minute. In your mouth, is it a little bit dry? Could you use some water? And if you have something next to you, usually people start taking a drink, right? Otherwise, physiologically, our blood pressure will decrease if we don't have enough water. That can lead to a host of other changes. You might think decreased blood pressure is a good thing if you're typically a little hypertensive or have high blood pressure, but ultimately it's not really advantageous. Again, it's a deviation from homeostasis, which can affect a lot of our other systems. The hormone levels change in our body as well if we are low on body water. So if we don't have enough water, arginine vasopressin goes up. Arginine vasopressin is also known typically to the layperson as antidiuretic hormone. So when those levels go up, number one, we don't diurese. So we don't go to the bathroom. We don't have to pee as much. That's one of the ways that we restore or maintain normal body water levels. The other thing that this hormone does is it actually presses on our vasculature to maintain, or in this case, increase blood pressure, which chronically is not a good thing. And then we also, when we don't have enough water, will experience symptoms, the most common of which are headache, fogginess, sometimes even dizziness if our blood pressure goes down too low or we're moving or changing postures at the same time that we don't have adequate body water stores, and fatigue being one of the more common ones as well. So if we, I always equate this to the 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon fatigue that we feel, and we feel like we need more coffee, or we're getting tired and I need something else to eat, or a snack, or I'm a little bit hungry. One of the other things that's important to note is that our maintenance for homeostasis in our brain, the location for hunger and thirst are very closely related. It's the same portion of our hypothalamus that will control both of these. So sometimes we confuse or misconstrue thirst for hunger, because if we eat something, it actually sometimes will quench our thirst a little bit depending on what we eat. So in terms of chronic disease and hydration, I'll try and make the case that hydration is pretty important in the big scheme of things. This is a figure that comes from a research review published a few years back, but it ties in, every single arrow demonstrates one of the effects that's been documented with at least 3 scientific peer-reviewed publications tying hydration status or low body water or chronic dehydration to that condition. So chronic levels or high levels of our dehydration hormone, arginine vasopressin, leads to hypertension long-term, or an increase in our blood pressure. If we are dehydrated over time, it leads to increased risk of metabolic syndrome and diabetes. It leads to faster aging. So if we want to stay young, we should stay hydrated. It leads to increased bone demineralization if we are chronically dehydrated. Increased pain. Our blood concentrations are different chronically if we're dehydrated. It leads to larger infection, systemic inflammation, cellular proliferation, and differentiation as well. So that hydration, chronic dehydration, is tied to many different forms of cancer and cancer risk. Decreased cognition. One of the ways that we maintain cognition in elderly populations is to increase the amount that people are consuming in their older age. So hopefully this makes the case. I'm not going to run through individual studies related to each one of these, but it should sell the case a little bit that when our homeostasis is off because we're a little bit dehydrated, if you're chronically a little bit dehydrated and our levels of this antidiuretic or arginine vasopressin hormone are elevated, we have a lot of negative consequences that can affect our lives for the future. So now that I've made the case, so okay, how much should you drink? And essentially, when experts try to make these recommendations, it's difficult to make a recommendation for everybody, every individual. So the recommendations are based on studies, of course, but they're epidemiological studies, and a lot of times they lack scientific control because we're studying free living individuals in a population. But they're based on essentially the crux of these studies is that when people drink this much or more, they have a decreased risk of that chronic disease or a multitude or conglomeration of chronic diseases. So it does not mean it's 100% effective. It doesn't mean that, oh, because there's been a couple studies that have tied better hydration or better fluid consumption or more fluid consumption every day, that it decreased your chances of cancer. It doesn't mean that if you maintain your hydration, you won't get cancer. Does it mean that you're better off at staving off cancer? Yeah. And avoiding it? Absolutely. And there are always individual differences. But, so before you get to this and you start having this big time water bottle and you're over consuming fluids, because that is a thing, that there are some people that probably over consume fluids, albeit rare. Normal fluid consumption on a continuum is like this. So this is total water intake or total fluid intake in liters per day. Some people drink a half a liter a day. A half a liter a day of all fluids. A half a liter a day is less than this. So this is about 21 ounces. So this is 2/3 of a liter right here. But some people, this is all the fluids they consume in one single day in a 24-hour period. And this is total fluids. So that would include everything: sugar sweetened beverages, alcoholic beverages, whatever, diet sodas, soft drinks, water in and of itself, sport drinks, who cares? Most people fall between 1.5 liters and 3 liters a day consumption. All right. So you're probably in that range. Most people are. So the range is also very big. So some people only consume about a half a liter a day. There's other people that drink 5 liters a day. 5 liters a day is honestly pretty hard to do. I've tried it before. It's pretty hard to do. Frequent visits to the restroom on that day. So in the end, the blanket recommendation where we can avoid many of these chronic diseases is that males should drink or consume 3.7 liters a day of total fluid. Females should consume 2.7 liters a day of total fluid. Keep in mind, I want to make this point pretty clear today too, that everything counts. So if you drink a big smoothie for breakfast that is a half a liter, 16 ounces about, that counts. If you like regular Coca-Cola or sugar sweetened beverages and you drink those, in terms of total fluid amounts, that counts. Caffeinated coffee, one of my favorite beverages, counts. Okay? Caffeine does not dehydrate you or compromise your fluid balance. So caffeine lovers, rejoice. We also get water and fluid from foods. So the true recommendation of total fluid intake is 3 to 3.5 liters a day for males, knowing that you're also going to be consuming foods, and you do get some fluids from your food. So obviously if somebody, a male, drank 3 liters a day and they consumed 3 meals and a snack or 2 during a day, then normally they would be getting the 3.7 liters a day of total fluid intake. Females, the recommendation would be 2 to 2.5 liters a day. So that's the blanket recommendation. By the way, 1 liter of fluid equals 33.8 ounces to be precise. Most water bottles these days are labeled. At least I know typically they're labeled on the bottom with how many ounces they are. There are a lot of the larger ones that are labeled with liters. If it is a full liter water bottle, those are easier because then you're like, if you have one at work throughout the day, you can just fill it up in the morning, fill it up again later, and then you know how much you consume during your workday, and then you could go from there. So how do you know that you're drinking enough fluid for you individually? Okay, well, let's talk about that. How do you figure this out? Well, one, you can keep track of your fluid consumption. That would be one way to do it. And if you're meeting those blanket recommendations, that's pretty good. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to pay attention to these three things. If you don't want to measure out how much coffee you have in the morning, how much tea you have later, your sugar sweetened beverage, your half a liter at lunch, and then try and add all these ounces together to figure out if you're meeting the recommendations, you could just pay attention daily to these three things. Your body weight, if you take it every day at the same time, typically we recommend it fluctuates the least amount if you take this first thing in the morning. Most home body weight scales these days have a switch on the bottom where you can change the display to kilograms instead of pounds. If you measure this in kilograms, this will become important later when we talk about calculating your sweat rate and figuring things out. Urine color or frequency. We did a study in our department a couple years ago. Dr. Matt Gagnon did a study looking at just urine frequency, so how often somebody goes to the bathroom. And at least for males, it worked or equated out to, if you go to the bathroom more than 5 times in a 24-hour period, then you have I think it was 80 to 85% chance that you are normally hydrated throughout your day. Good for you. I would say this, different people urinate or have a drive to go to the bathroom at different urgencies. So some people would go to the bathroom more often than other people. And you guys can probably think about coworkers already with this, right? Or family members that you have associated with. Urine color, I put the urine color chart on here. It's definitely a little bit varied every time you look at a screen. So who knows if these tints are really totally true to the original urine color chart. But obviously darker urine means more dehydration. Lighter urine means you're more hydrated. And we should typically strive for a 1, 2, or 3 on the urine color chart, not 5, 6, 7. And if you ever get to 8, there's other things going on that probably mean kidney damage or kidney stress. And then you evaluate your thirst level, okay? If you evaluate all 3 of these at the same time, you have this what Venn diagram. So the W stands for weight, the U stands for urine color, or it could be urine frequency, and thirst. And if your body weight is down and your urine is dark, but you're not thirsty, then you would still come up to the likely between the W and the U, the likely that you're dehydrated and you could have a drink. If your weight is down, your urine's dark, and you're thirsty, it is very likely that you are a bit dehydrated at this point and you should have a drink. If your body weight is the same as it has been, or if your body weight is up, your urine is clear and you're not thirsty, you probably don't need to have a drink. So it becomes pretty simple if you put these 3 things together. So that way you would know if you're hydrated on a daily basis. And you can also play into that on an hourly basis. So if it's been 8 hours that you've been at work and you haven't gone to the bathroom, you probably should have a drink. Because then if you thought to yourself, oh, am I thirsty? Yes, I'm really thirsty. And then guess what's going to happen? If you jumped on a scale, your body weight would probably be down. And then you would go to the bathroom and your urine would be dark and you would be thirsty. It's very likely at that point that you would be dehydrated. Okay? If you've been drinking fluid all day because it's at your desk, and perhaps you're nervous because there's stress going on at work because of some pandemic or something like that, and you've been going to the bathroom a lot during your day, then you think about your urine frequency of like, okay, I've gone twice an hour today to the bathroom. I think I need to stop doing that. You probably don't need to have another drink. And then when we get to exercise, I hope by now that you all understand exercise is medicine. I think there's been some presentations about this already. Obviously, this is something to do for your health. in terms of a hydration standpoint, yes, it's good to maintain your hydration throughout exercise. How do we know we do that? Because things change when we exercise, for sure. We can't just go back to the what theory or Venn diagram during exercise or surrounding exercise. So one thing to point out, sweating is good for you. Everybody should do it every now and then, especially during the summer, like the weather that we're having these days. It's beautiful. We should start exercise hydrated. So this would be where you would use that Venn diagram to make sure you're hydrated when you start exercise. Okay, if we start a little dehydrated and we know we're going to sweat, we're going to further dehydrate during exercise. Everybody should know your own sweat rate. And the reason I say that is our individual sweat rate is highly variable. So keep that in mind. So what you do is you measure pre-exercise body weight, again in kilograms, post-exercise body weight in kilograms. Typically, we recommend that people measure their body weight nude or with very little clothing on, because if you sweat into your clothing, then your clothing holds on to the water that you sweat out, and therefore it's giving you a misrepresentation of how much you may have lost. And usually I recommend people exercise for 30 minutes if they're going to measure their sweat rate, because that makes the calculation really easy. And then you take that and you say pre-exercise body weight minus post-exercise body weight, and you would divide by the exercise duration in 1 hour. So just to look at this, the reason we measure ourselves in kilogram, our body weight in kilograms, is 1 kilogram equals 1 liter. Easy equation. 70, so say somebody weighs 70 kilograms before exercise. After exercise, they measure themselves again. They weigh 69.6. And then they exercise for 30 minutes or 0.5 hours. Their sweat rate then comes out to 0.8 liters an hour. Okay? It might sound gross to you, but most people's sweat rates during exercise range from about 0.5 liter an hour to over 3 liters an hour. Okay, that's kind of gross. I've definitely measured people's sweat rates, athletes that sweat more than 4 liters an hour. That is crazy. That's like sweat, talk about sweat pouring off of you. It's like a human fountain. Water goes in, water comes out. It's crazy. So now what? That you did this highly precise scientific calculation. Well, if you sweat about 0.8 liters an hour and you are 70 kilograms, the goal is to lose not more than 2% of your body weight during a workout. 2% of 70 kilograms is 1.4 kilograms. So if you exercise for an hour, you should drink somewhere between 0.2 and 0.8 liters during your workout. That's not that bad. That's an easy sweat rate to keep up with. And that'll make sure that you don't lose 2% of your body weight during exercise. One thing to point out is that there is this other condition with exercise where people have overconsumed fluids because they're so focused on hydration, and they have a plan where they will drink as much as they possibly can during exercise, and they gain weight during exercise. So they overconsume fluids beyond what they're sweating out. So they're gaining weight. Nobody should ever gain weight during exercise. That's like one of the benefits of exercise, is that it helps with weight loss, or at least weight maintenance, right? During a single workout where we sweat, we shouldn't be gaining weight. It doesn't work that way. Either our scale is really off, or you drank too much or ate too much during your workout. So why would we stay hydrated? We also know from exercise literature and many research studies that exercise, if we maintain our hydration throughout exercise, it speeds recovery, allows you to maximize performance, it keeps you safe, and affords you the optimal benefits from exercise. So if you exercise when you are dehydrated, some of the advertised benefits of exercise, they will be limited if we exercise when we are dehydrated. So in order to maximize getting the benefits from the exercise that we participate in, we actually need to maintain our hydration status so that we can recover, maximize our performance, and feel like these people. I mean, exercise makes you so happy, right? I don't know, it looks like they're on a beach too, maybe that's it. So in summary, I don't know what time it is, but I'm almost done. This is good. Am I actually on time?
Yeah, you have 5 minutes left.
Yes. Never do this. So in summary, poor hydration contributes to many chronic diseases and conditions. So it's something we should pay attention to. And when we pay attention to it, you should keep track of your own personal hydration. And then we should definitely exercise. But when we exercise, we should stay hydrated as well. Feel free to email me at any point in time if you have further questions or need help in calculating your sweat rate or getting recommendations on hydration for you. And once again, thank you to the folks that are running DFEND and the Center for Human Nutrition.
Thank you so much. And because we do have about 5 minutes left, if anyone has any questions, feel free to turn on your mic and ask it, or you can drop it in the chat and I can read it out. I did happen to share our DFEND website, which has this week's Fast Fact on it, as well as our YouTube channel, which has 2 new videos, one talking about how to make a snack plate and one talking about how to infuse water different ways so that you can make sure you're staying hydrated, but also trying to find alternatives to your higher sugar-based beverages.
Any questions?
We do have a question from Dr. Howie. I know everything counts, you said, but what is the best drink to rehydrate?
So, and this is a tough question to answer with all the dietitians in the Zoom call, right? So, honestly, the best thing to rehydrate with would be to replace what you are losing. And despite the marketing claims by many of the sport drink companies that make you believe that that sport drink will replace everything that everybody loses a different amount. And it depends on what exercise we do and what's in your sweat, because what exercise we do also will burn different macronutrients, right? So it is more you should replace everything that you lose. So yes, water should be a part of it and a main constituent of it. There are many studies out there that show that, sure, something with carbohydrates and or electrolytes in it can speed electrolyte replacement and carbohydrate replenishment in our muscles. But I usually tell people, yes, you should rehydrate after exercise when they ask me that question. So whatever you prefer, outside of alcoholic beverages following exercise or following anything to rehydrate, yes, you should drink whatever you prefer at that point in time.
Great, thank you.
So this is Jamie, Brendon. What about caffeine? Because you always hear that it actually makes you more thirsty, or do you have to just drink more coffee to get hydrated? Like, so, is there truth to that Instagram meme?
Caffeine, what it does is it speeds smooth muscle contraction, and smooth muscle surrounds our bladder. So caffeine makes us go to the bathroom and empty our bladder sooner. However, in terms of fluid balance in our body, it doesn't change fluid balance at all. So if you consume caffeine, it will rehydrate you. If you consume caffeine, it doesn't dehydrate you. So yeah, sure, you might have to go to the bathroom quicker or more often if you're highly caffeinated, but your hydration and body water stores don't change because of caffeine, which is great news, right?
So here's another question, and I'm sorry to have a question. So if you have a drink like Gatorade Zero, which may have artificial sweeteners in it, versus Gatorade, would you expect to see, do you know if artificial sweeteners impact hydration or not?
There have been studies on that have shown no effect of artificial sweeteners. Those beverages with sugars and carbohydrates in them, you will hold on to more of that fluid simply because fluid follows where the sugars go. So once those sugars are absorbed, you're also absorbing and holding on to a little bit more water, which is why those are sports drinks and recovery beverages, right? But I normally would tell people following exercise, even a follow-up for Dr. Howie's question was, if you eat to replenish what you've burned during exercise and then drink water, you would be much better off. So normally for the normal exerciser that isn't our perhaps Razorback athlete that is doing a very intense practice for 2.5 hours, who's sweat a ton, their situation might be a little bit different. But I normally tell people, eat a meal and drink fluids after exercise and you'll replenish what you lost. You should be good. But I haven't seen anything related to artificial sweeteners of any kind, whether it's sugar alcohols or aspartame or any of those that change your water balance.
That's good to know. Does anyone else have any questions for Dr. McDermott? We're right at 12 about.
I have one quick question for those of us agents that work with low impact, low intensity, or moderate exercise, usually 45 minutes to 1 hour. So we should just recommend that they bring water with them, because that amount of time you do need to rehydrate or keep hydrated.
Yeah, I would, if it's low impact exercise, then I would just continue what they would be doing if they were sitting during that same time, right? So yes, little amounts of fluid all the way through that. And if they don't, or it makes them uncomfortable or it's cumbersome for them to do that, definitely would still strongly encourage the exercise, and just that they drink a little bit extra afterwards. So yeah, they should drink during, but if they don't, then they know that they're probably down a little bit regardless, and then they would drink a little bit extra afterwards. So either way.
Great.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions for Dr. McDermott? And his email will be, I guess it's on your slide, and the slides will be posted, if they're not already, on our DFEND website, and the YouTube video should be up by Monday afternoon. And next week's topic is appetite and hunger. And make sure you share with your colleagues. I think we forgot to ask Mary Hightower to circulate our advertisement this week, so we had a little bit lower attendance. But we appreciate everyone who was able to call in and help you learn something more about hydration. Thank you, Dr. McDermott, for answering my 2 questions, because I was having a soccer mom debate about giving my kid Gatorade Zero versus like regular Gatorade. And I feel like I won that debate without having a lot of scientific backing. So anyway, well, thank you everyone. And I'll go ahead and stop recording.